The beautiful people, the beautiful people. Okay. Hello, guys. Welcome to part 3. Me doing the shit. So, it's midterm day, y'all. My midterm is officially opened as of 7 a.m. this morning, and it's going to close as of 7 a.m. tomorrow. When will I be doing? Sorry, I'm just looking at text, y'all. Yes, I still got the bonnet on. Yes, I still got the same sweater on. Y'all, I'm gonna be in this till God's know when. Because plans today changed, and I decided to be lazy for a second. Don't be me, kids. Don't be me, no. Dun, 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 dun. I actually don't know how to sing, though. So we're on the last chapter. Cutting to the wire. These videos, I watched them so many times. Ah! I'm not here for it. Ah! Who fucking did that? Get the fuck out of here. Okay. The beautiful people, the beautiful people. Looking at my grades, it just pisses me off. Pisses me off. It's not the complete worst, but it's not good. It's not where I want it to be. Oh! My God. Can't even do November 7th. That's tomorrow, 7 a.m. It's 30 questions, boys. Oh my God. The beautiful people, beautiful people. Oh, right, I'm doing a math page. Okay. Basically trying to see how much I gotta get. Oh my God. I don't like that. Oh my God, I have to do so good on this. I'm so scared. I'm so scared. Girl, put your records on. Dun, 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 dun. You're stupid. I'm just reading. I've been watching this video yet again.
Factor payments, which is basic account. So the current account here has two components, which are the net export. Here, the difference between export and import. And then here we have the net factor payments, which is basically the net investment from abroad. So remember, as a reminder here, I can put the equilibrium condition in the good market equilibrium condition in a closed economy, which was just equality between desired level of savings equal to closed economy here. Okay, which is going the national desired level of saving equal to the national level of desired level of investment. So you see the difference here. So now in chapter 4, this equilibrium will have to determine the interest rate, whereas here now the interest rate is going to be determined by this equality. This is open economy, all right? Okay, so
Beautiful people, beautiful people. I think I wrote this down. It's Friday.
if we see this difference in these two equilibrium condition, we understand now in a case of an open economy here, it will mean that the national income is actually equal to consumption plus investment plus government purchases plus the net export. So we have only net export because for simplicity and of the analysis, we consider that the net factor of payment is equal to 0. So to summarize, then we will find that if the net factor of payment is 0, desired saving is going to be equal to desired investment plus the net export. So net export is going to be the difference between national income and the total spending in the economy by domestic residents. So consumption of goods and services, investment by firms, and government spending here. So how is the real interest rate now going to be determined? So it's not the domestic real interest rate anymore, it's a world real interest rate, because now we are considering not only the domestic capital market, but also the international foreign capital market. So to understand how the world real interest rate is determined, you have to understand that large open economies are not all the same. We have small open economies, and then we have also large open economies. So what's the difference between the two? Let's say, for example, Canada. Canada is a small open economy compared to the US, for example. So this is coming from the fact that the Canada is a small country, the population is around 10% of what it is in the US. So the influence, if all Canadians will be buying international goods and international financial assets, that's not going to have the same impact as if Americans are buying international financial assets. So if the Americans, because of how big, how large the country is, if they buy international financial assets, this is going to have a much more higher impact at the international level compared to a small country like Canada. So you understand that now the real interest rate is going to be influenced more by large open economies compared to small open economy. Because small open economies do not have a large influence at the international level, at the international financial market, they will take the world real interest rate as given, whereas large economies will be actually influencing the change or the determination of the world real interest rate. So here I will give an example of how a small open economy is going to take as given the world real interest rate. So remember, in the previous chapter, we were determining the real interest rate by just looking at here. Let's say that's the real interest rate, and then we have the desired level of savings and investment. So the interest rate in a closed economy was just determined by the intersection of savings and investment. So now we have an open economy. So let's say here maybe the intersection will give an interest rate equal to 5%. But then in the world real interest rate, based on the financial international asset trade in large economies, the world interest rate is now determined to a higher level, let's say 8%. So what that means, that is going to give an incentive for domestic residents in a small open economy to save more because they can get a higher return. But the investment level is going to be lower because now investing at the interest rate equal to 8%, it means that now it's much more expensive to borrow. It's very costly to borrow. So what happens here? It means that in a small open economy, the saving level is equal to this point, whereas the investment level is equal to this point. So it means that this is the amount of money available in a small open economy to be which is available for international lending. So a country with this much level of savings will be able to lend internationally. So what if the interest rate is the world real interest rate is much more lower? Let's say it's equal to 3%. That means this is going to discourage more the savings, the national savings in a small open economy. But this is an incentive for investment because now borrowing is going to be much more cheaper. So this is the amount of money that investors in a small open economy are going to be borrowing internationally. So the surplus here, at this point here, the surplus of funds correspond to foreign lending, whereas here we have foreign borrowing because we have less savings compared to how much investment is needed in the economy. So what happens if a country which was, let's say, example, was experiencing a surplus, all of a sudden start to experience a negative supply shock. So it means that there is, for example, a reduction of savings due to an adverse shock affecting an economy, like what we have been experiencing with the COVID-19. Savings is decreasing compared to because of the income has been decreasing. So what happens in that situation? There is going to be a shift of the curves here. The saving curve is shifting toward left. So what that means is that instead of being able to lend international this amount of money, the country is only going to be able to lend internationally just this amount of money. So that's a negative impact that can actually happen in any economy when the country is experiencing a negative shock, a contraction of the national income. Foreign lending can also decrease in case the small open economy is experiencing a positive shock. Let's say there is a technology advancement which encourages firms to invest more. So what will happen in that situation is that there is going to be a shift of the investment curve toward right, and then before, when the economy was able to lend internationally this amount of money, there is the funds, the surplus that is available. But then now, because of the technology advancement, the only funds that is available for international lending, foreign lending, is just going to be this amount of money. Right? So look in the textbook, you will see a much more clear graph here, which explains the difference or the impact of a supply shock in an economy when it comes to the change of foreign lending. Hi again, everyone. Welcome back. This is part 3 of chapter 5. And then in this part, we want to analyze how the saving and investment diagram of large open economies are going to be different from what we saw in chapter 4 when we were looking at how the real interest rate is determined based on the national saving and the national investment. So as I said before, the world real interest rate is going to be determined based on the level of international lending of one country compared to the level of international borrowing of the other country. So there is world real interest rate is not going to be fixed in that situation because those are large open economies, and that's what makes the difference between small open economies and large open economies. Large open economies are world real interest rate is not going to be fixed, whereas small open economies, the world real interest rate is fixed and that is taken as given. So let's use the saving and investment diagrams to look at how the world real interest rate is determined. We consider that in this case we have two large open economies, the home country and the foreigner country. We want to see how the international lending of one country has to be equal to the international borrowing of the other country to have the equilibrium world real interest rate. So let's say has to be equal to the international borrowing of the economies, the world real interest rate is fixed and that is taken as given. So let's use the saving and investment diagrams to look at how the world real interest rate is determined. We consider that in this case we have two large open economies, the home country and the foreigner country. We want to see how the international lending of one country has to be equal to the international borrowing of the other country to have the equilibrium world real interest rate. So let's say, for example, if the world real interest rate is equal to this level, okay, let's say this is equal to 7%. In the home country, there is going to be more national saving compared to the level of investment. Let's say the difference between two is equal to 300 billion. So that means that probably, as an example, we can use that the saving level is equal to 500 billion when the interest rate is 7%, and the investment level is equal to, let's say, 200 billion. So that means that the home country is willing to lend internationally in the foreigner country 300 billion. See how much international borrowing the foreigner country needs at 7%. Again, as an example, we can say that in the foreigner country at 7%, investment is equal to, let's say, 600 billion, whereas the saving level it's going to be equal to 500 billion. So what the foreigner country needs actually to compensate with this difference is just going to be equal to 100 billion. So what we here is that international borrowing is not equal to international lending. So there is more funds available for international lending compared to how much is needed in the foreign country to finance all the investment projects. So what happens in that situation is that the interest rate need to decrease. Okay, let's say that the interest rate is going to decrease. So that means this is the process of adjustment of interest rate. It's decreasing to, let's say, 5%. What will happen in terms of the investment level, saving level in both the home country and the foreign country? At 5% interest rate, what we have here in the home country, we see that there is going to be a reduction of national saving, but there is going to be an increase of national investment. Let's say that national investment here is increasing to, let's say, 250 billion, whereas savings is decreasing to 450 billion. Now, international lending is decreasing from 300 billion to 200 billion. Okay, so what happens in the foreign country with a low interest rate? Again, we want to go all the way to the foreign country. At 5%, we see that investment is going to increase. So investment increases because a low interest rate, so the user cost is going to be lower, and the saving level is also going to decrease, the same as in the home country. Let's say that investment level in the foreign country is increasing from 600 billion to, let's say, 650 billion, whereas in the investment level is, no, the saving level, is decreasing to 450. So that's a reduction from 500 billion of saving to 450 billion worth of saving after the reduction, the adjustment of the interest rate. So how much international borrowing is needed here? The difference between the two is going to be 200 billion. So international borrowing is equal to international lending. So that will make the word real interest rate equal to 5%, the equilibrium real interest rate. So if you're asked, for example, to calculate the equilibrium real interest rate in the international capital market, what you want to do. I was driving, I had to pull over because my ass finna crash about this shit. My ass finna crash behind me. Y'all don't know, I feel so fulfilled. Like, I'm sweating, excuse my teeth sweat. I'm sweating, like. That's right now, you're gonna drive through. You're gonna drive through the floor now. You wanna start that early. On a serious note, like, I'm so fucking happy. Like, dog, like, this, like, how do you compare this shit, bro? Do y'all know what this shit feel like? This like you've been cooking collard greens all day, and now it's time to fucking eat, and you ain't ate shit all day. This Thanksgiving morning, you don't eat nothing all day because you waiting on Thanksgiving dinner, and now it's time to fucking eat. We better eat it up. We better eat it up. We better eat it up. Eat it up. Eat it up. Eat it up. We better play some motherfucking cricket. We better eat it up. We better play the cricket. You want to compare, let's say we still have the home country. You will have information about the home country and the foreign country, information related to the national saving in the home country and the current account in the home country. So, and as well as the national saving in the foreign country and country, as in our example on chapter 5. If you have any question, please let me know. Hello everyone, welcome back. This is part 2 of chapter 6. And then in this part, we are going to see how we can explain the sources of economic growth using a simplified theoretical model. In the first part of this chapter, we saw that an empirical model can be used to explain the sources of long-run economic growth. We use the growth accounting model, but that model itself doesn't completely explain a country's growth performance. The reason is because the empirical model will take economy's rate of input as given. So, for example, the empirical model will not explain why capital or labor are growing at one specific rate.
Like the wrong video.
The theoretical model we are going. Hi everyone, welcome to Econ 2 by comparing economic growth data of different countries here. We have 8 major countries. The economic growth in 8 major countries from 1870 to 2010. So what do we see here? We see that countries have been growing at different rates, with Japan having the highest annual growth rate of 2.4%, and we followed by Sweden with a 2% of annual growth rate, and the country which has been growing at the terms of so we also can see the difference across countries in terms of income per capita when we look at data for one specific year. Like, for example, here we are comparing the GDP per capita in different countries in 1997. So what do we see here? We see that US had the highest GDP per capita, almost $30,000 per capita, and Russia having the lowest among the rich countries. And when we look at poor countries, those are countries with a very low income level. So we have Romania with a GDP per capita that is almost less than 5,000 per capita, and Ethiopia, Tanzania that have much more lower GDP per capita. So we want to understand the source of these differences. Why some countries are able to grow much rapidly compared to others? Why some countries have the highest national income compared to others? Can those countries converge to the same level of growth at some point? So those are the questions we are going to actually answer in this chapter. We're starting this chapter by looking at the source of economic growth. If you remember chapter 3, we identify a mathematical way to represent national aggregate output. So this is the production function here, which says that aggregate output is a function of capital and labor and a total factor of productivity, which represent technology here. So can we understand, can we look at the data and then identify if national income or output here, the source of the graph of national income or data we extend the production function, we can find an empirical way or a mathematical way of so if we extend the production function, we can find and output. To actually identify.
Hello? I'm good. How are you? I'm just studying for a midterm right now. Yeah, did you need something? Okay. Yes, mama. Okay. Where are you? Okay. You too should be careful, vice versa, you know? Okay. Okay. Yeah, and you have like your face mask and everything, right? And what's it called? The sanitizer I got you, right? I will. Isn't it so cute with the little Santa hat? Yeah, because you can hook it on anything. Yeah, exactly, exactly. That's what I thought about too. Like the main thing is just I also like the fact that it has like the hook thing that you can put on literally anything. Yeah, because then you can't lose that one, you know? That's what I was thinking about. Yeah. Yay, that's good. The sense like good. Yeah, the midterms today, so I'm just doing some last minute stuff. Bye. Love you. Mwah.
identify what the main source of growth or increase of our income in a specific country. So if we the production function, we can find an empirical way or a mathematical way of representing economic growth. Which says that output growth of economic growth of income here, it's either coming from the growth of technology, increase of technology, increase of capital, or increase of a label. So this is what we call the growth accounting equation. So this is an empirical way to actually understand the source of economic growth of any country. So we can find data on output growth, GDP growth. We can find data on the growth of capital investment and employment here. But how do we measure total factor productivity? Because it's not possible to find data on that. It's not easy, or there is no any specific measurement of calculating the total factor productivity. We can treat it as a residual. So by just subtracting capital stock, the growth of capital and employment from output growth,
Holy shit.
we can actually determine what the total factor productivity growth is. The textbook gives an example of sources of economic growth in Canada between 1891 and 2015, and here we can see that for every period of time here we are considering in this example, the sources of growth are different. Like if we compare, for example, if we look at the first column here, between 1891 and 1910, the main source of growth was labor growth in Canada. So the increase of population was the main source of increase of output in the economy, right? But if you compare that to the third column, which is looking at the sources of growth between 1926 and 1956, the main source of growth is productivity growth. So the productivity growth during that period of time represent 2.7%. So that's a very high share compared to labor growth and capital growth. So it shows that technology was increasing during that time, and then also that increase of manufacturing and industrialization, as a country in Canada, we were able to increase production. So if you will be analyzing different countries, you will find that the sources of economic growth are different for different period of time. Going to analyze is called the neoclassical growth model, or it's also called the solo model.
The neoclassical model.
This model is good in terms of explaining how an economy is able to accumulate capital and the relation that exists between capital accumulation and economic growth. In addition to understanding the relation that exists between capital accumulation and long-run economic growth, we also want to understand the factors that explain long-run standard of living. So we basically will look at the relation between long-run standard of living and factors such as the saving rates, the population growth rate, and the rate of technical progress. This model does a very good job as well in terms of explaining the evolution of long-run economic growth, meaning that we can understand if in the long run economic growth can stabilize or can accelerate or stop at some point. There are a few assumptions that are necessary and that will make our analysis much more simple. The first assumption is that we are considering that population is growing, but the growth rate is fixed. And there is that will make if in the at some point our is much more simple. The first assumption is that we are considering that population is growing, but the growth rate is fixed. And there is both the population growth is growing and the workforce are growing at the same rate of n. So meaning that in every period, every year, if the population is growing by 5%, the workforce, meaning that the economy is closed and there is no government purchases. So, as we know, if an economy is closed and there is no government purchases, it means that aggregate economic activity can be written in this way. So, total aggregate, so the aggregate output is equal to aggregate consumption plus the investment. And this is because government purchases. This is equal to 0. So it's not going to be considered. And because we consider a closed economy, there is no net export here. It's equal to 0 as well. So you see how this model is just going to be simplified by considering that aggregate output is either used for consumption or for investment. So if aggregate output is equal to total consumption plus gross investment, it means that we can also rewrite the equation in this sense, saying that the uninvested part of the economy's output is consumed in this economy. So we can use the gross investment formula and rewrite this equation as this and the production function by rewriting the equation in this form. Again, we still interpret the equation in the same way, that the part of the economy's output that is not invested is consumed. But then here, this is much more easier to use because we are having the n here, which represents population growth and the growth of the workforce. And we also considering that there is a depreciation, which is d here, the depreciation rate of capital. I will go one step further and simplify again this equation and start to use output, consumption, and capture stock per worker. The reason why I do that is because we have the population and the labor force that are growing in this economy. So, for example, to get the consumption per worker, we divide the aggregate consumption by the number of workers available in this economy. And to get output per worker, I did the same thing here by dividing aggregate output by the number of workers available in the economy. And capital labor ratio, which is the stock capital stock per worker, is given by the capital stock over the number of workers available in the economy again. So since it output and gross worker, here your income invest put per worker this part per worker. So when we did we graph the aggregate output using the production function, we saw that the shape of the curve is an upward, is not experiencing any technical innovation in the textbook. Is the neoclassical growth model is the graph in the textbook is the figure 6.1. The neoclassical growth model is based on the concept that in the long run, capital stock and output grow at the same rate. So what that means is that if, for example, an economy is not experiencing any technical innovation, so there is no productivity growth at all in that economy. The only thing that is happening is that there is going to be new capital because there is growth. workforce, which is the case in our analysis because we are considering that population and workforce are growing at the fixed rate n, or there is going to be new capital because there is a need to replace depreciated capital. Capital is going to depreciate because machines have been used or equipment have been used for a very long time, so there is a need to replace or repair the equipment. Or for example, there has been an investment in roads by the government, for example, and then in the long run there is a need of reparation. So this absence of productivity growth implies that the economy is stable. So that's what we call a steady state. A steady state is a situation where an economy's output per worker or consumption per worker and capital stock per worker are constant over time. Because the variables are constant over time, it means that outputs per worker in time t plus 1, is it the same as output in time t, and it's going to be the same level of output every time. So we can get rid of the t here, and that's the same for every other variable. So at the end, we can rewrite our equation here. Out consumption per worker is equal to output per worker minus what the share of output per worker that is used for investment. So because we are not considering the timing here, we can say that this equation is written in a steady state. In the next video, we will look at how to graph this equation here by looking at how we can express the relation between consumption per worker and capital labor ratio, as well as looking at the relation between output per worker and capital labor ratio.
Okay, I'm gonna take a quick little break. I've been going for an hour-ish roughly. I'm gonna take a break, drink some water, eat some food, and yeah. That being said, I will be ending this live sesh. I feel like these are getting shorter and shorter because I'm getting down to it, baby. Um, yeah, I think the next one when I come back on, I don't know. I'm gonna go through practice questions next and just wish for the best. Yeah. Bye. That's if I come live. I don't know. I might not do another live. I may not, may not. Excuse me. But yeah, that is it. Bye.